All right. Looks like everything is working technology-wise. That makes me very happy. Okay, so looks like we have, oh, and I also wanted to introduce my colleague who's helping me today, Alexis, who may at times be sharing out things from the chat. But it looks like I can see that we have psychology and neuroscience, museum studies, biology. So thank you so much for sharing a nice group of interests that we have going on here. So, okay, I'm gonna jump right in. Just so you know who is talking to you today, I wanted to let you know a little bit about my own background. So I am a licensed psychologist. I have a PhD in counseling psychology from Texas Women's University. Spent most of my career in higher ed in mental health, and about 2 years ago switched over to career development. I love working with students. As I was thinking about the things that I wanted to share with you, I also wanted to share that I didn't get in my first round of applications. I initially had a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and psychology and tried to go the PhD JD route. For reasons I can't even explain, except I think that my brother is a lawyer, and I kind of thought, I don't know, well, I'll become a doctor and a lawyer at the same time. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the PhD JD route, but in hindsight, it was really not for me. And so I'm thankful that I didn't get in. At the time, I felt disappointed. But truth be told, I actually don't think I put enough intention and discipline into the application process. So, as I think back about things that would be helpful to share, it is important to spend some time putting your applications together. So that was a lesson for me that I didn't know enough, honestly. I didn't go talk to anybody. I didn't get any help. And so I went into everything not really knowing what I needed to do. So hopefully through attending workshops, through knowing your university resources, you can avoid some of the mistakes that I made. So didn't get in my first round, ultimately then decided to apply to a master's program, got into that master's program, which was the same program in the PhD. So then I ultimately got into the PhD program. It took me a long time to get from, first class to license. I'm not lying. I had a lot of life in between. Took on a job while I had my dissertation to do. Had a child, graduated while I was 5 months pregnant. So like a lot of life happened. And, one of the things I remember thinking is that I had this mentor. Her name was Dr. Justice, which I always thought was such a cool name, Dr. Justice. Anyway, she was a mentor of mine, and she said, Adria, be sure to have a life while you're pursuing this degree and this program so that you don't wake up and be 40 years old and like not have lived while you were getting this. And looking back, that was really excellent advice. Live while you're doing this. It's going to feel at times like this is all you're doing, but it's also important to figure out how to have a life while you're doing this. So I throw that out there as some words of wisdom I received. All right, enough about me. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about, like I said, letters of rec, kind of the what, who, when, and how of letters of recommendation. We're also going to be talking about entrance exams, and I have a little asterisk by that because COVID, entrance exams look different now. You have, what does it mean when it's optional, and when should you decide to take it, when, questions I never really had to think about. So I think it's important that we have these conversations. So thinking about, do you need to take one? If so, how do you prepare? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about self-care a little bit along the way, as I mentioned, and then making sure that you know all of the different resources that are available to you. All right, so well, the psychologist in me cringes a little bit at the use of emojis. I think the idea here being you're going to feel lots of different things along the way. If you wouldn't mind, if you feel comfortable, in Zoom, you have now the option to do many different emojis. How are you feeling today about applying to grad school? Is there an emoji that captures your feelings? If so, feel free to see. I'll see if I can see those. You know how to do that? Yep. Okay. Oh no, Minnie, yes. If you want to put something in the chat instead, totally fine. Oh yes, yes. Yeah, yes. Okay, so we got a range of emotions. That is totally normal. That is totally normal. And you'll likely have that range of emotions throughout the application process. So I want to normalize that. You know, if you take away nothing, I hope you take away much more, but if you take away nothing except, okay, how I'm feeling, and then I'm up and down, and then I feel anxious one moment and excited the next moment, and terrified and uncertain, and okay, that's normal. If you walk away feeling that today, I hope that is something that you experience. All right. So this is actually part 2 of the workshop series, and I'm happy to send out some resources. And actually, most of the handouts that I'll send out, you'll have everything. You won't have missed anything handout wise, but I just wanted to remind everyone of the puzzle that is putting an application together. So we have GPA, we have entrance exams, which again, because of COVID, and also because I think in some ways COVID has caused universities and programs to say, you know, are these exams the best way? Are they a valid indicator of what a student can do in grad school? And I think many universities are saying, no, I don't think so. So again, entrance exams, resumes and curriculum vitae, letters of rec, what you've done experience-wise, research, service, your work, your volunteer, and then personal statements or statements of purpose. That's kind of everything that is the puzzle that is the application. And this is, it really doesn't depend on, you know, every program has most of these components, right? So what I want you to be thinking about today is what this puzzle looks like for you. Think about where you fall in terms of GPA, in terms of entrance exams, in terms of the experiences that you've had. Where are your bright spots? And where, you know, if we're honest, like none of us are perfect, right? Do you have any weaknesses? And if so, how can you make intentional decisions, particularly in who you ask for your letters of recommendation, to help compensate for some of those weaknesses? So that's what I want you to be thinking about, your puzzle. I can't speak today. I've had this problem all day. The puzzle that is your application. So I'll try to get better, but I appreciate the warm smiles at that statement. Okay, letters of rec. Like I said, what, who, how, and when. So most, if not all, grad schools will require letters of recommendation. What you'll need to do, and I hope you all have come up with your own system of keeping everything organized, right? I remember way back, you know, years and years ago when I was pulling these applications together, they all had different details, different number of applications, letters of oh, see, I can't speak today. Okay, so hopefully I'm showing you my humanity, right? So I'm gonna get better though. Okay, so all the programs had a different number and different details related to the letters of application. So whatever works for you. In the olden days, I had a binder. I was really big in binders, but I know that's kind of antiquated now, right? So if you have an Excel spreadsheet or whatever works for you to keep everything detailed, everything organized. But the letters of recommendation are really an important piece of your application. Don't think of them as something that doesn't matter. They really do matter. And you want to be intentional about who you ask. And then also how you prepare those letter writers to write the best possible letter for you. If at any time you have any questions, feel free to unmute, throw something in the chat. This is, as you can see, it's a very casual conversation that I want us to be having, right? Okay, so who? So I know a lot of times people get kind of caught up in who. Who am I going to ask? So I think there are some myths, and you know, one of those myths is that you have to have a super tight relationship with a faculty member in order to even approach them about a letter. I mean, it's wonderful if you have that, but don't hold yourself back if you don't have that. What you want to look for is, do you have a relationship with a faculty member? So do you have somebody that you've taken multiple classes with? Do you have somebody that you've done really well in their class, and not just done really well, but maybe you have a connection of some sort? Maybe you've worked on their research team. You just connected with them in a different way. Think about what relationships you have with your faculty members. Again, you don't have to be like at their office hours every day. You know, you don't have to be that close, but you do have to have some sort of a reason for asking them. Excellent point, Edgar. I think for a lot of students, hopefully by the end of today, you'll see that you can prepare your letter writers. You can prepare your letter writers and actually help them write a stronger letter for you. So what I want you to think about is who you can ask. So think about all the letter writers, you know, potential. You may be having a brainstorming session. You may even do that right now. Start writing, oh, there was that faculty member where I took that class. Oh, and they liked that assignment that I did. And they gave me great feedback on that paper. So start generating that list for yourself. Even as we're talking, this can be a working meeting. But remember, the purpose of the letter is to highlight that you are competent to do the work of grad school and that you possess skills that will let you do the work of the profession, of the grad school program. You know, for PhD programs, and I imagine we have some who are looking for PhD and some who are looking for masters. PhD programs really want to see that research. So it will be important that you have letter writers who can speak to that research ability. For masters, certainly that wouldn't hurt, but not always as important. And this is also very discipline specific. So the strongest letters are those letter writers who can speak to your academic promise and who have a story to tell about you. Now, remember, they don't just have to come up with it themselves. In fact, you don't want just to ask somebody, oh, hey, can you write me a strong letter, and leave it at that. You need to give them evidence. You need to give them things. So when you're thinking about who to ask, we've got some key things to think about. How do they know you? Again, in a perfect world, you have faculty members who know you multiple ways. You had them in class. You were also on their research team. I don't know how else you might, you volunteered to help them with a fundraiser. I don't know. You just know them in multiple settings, right? So can they speak to your academic ability? But here's where you get to like do more. You need to help them. Faculty members are really busy. Part of their job is to support students in furthering their education, right? So I think hopefully you'll have experienced that faculty members invite you to talk to them about this. They want to talk to you about this. I know COVID has made connecting with people different. And remember, it's made connecting with people different across the board. So if this is a weakness for you, it's likely a weakness for other people who are also applying to these programs. But what I want you to think about is, have you and how you can gather some documents for them. Your statement of purpose, even if it's not beautiful. Like I could imagine, I know I would maybe have felt, oh, I can't give this to somebody if it's not perfect. No, you need to give them what you have. And I don't know how many of you you're like in this cycle right now, right? You're probably asking for letters and doing this right now. Yes, I can't see heads, but feel free to tell me in the chat if this is something that you're actually involved in right as we speak. So you want to gather your statement of purpose, the relevant courses that you've had, any kind of evaluations you've had, your resume or CV, and then things you'd like them to include in their letter. And some of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, it sounds like I'm writing the letter. Well, in many ways, I think you're really trying to give them as much as they can to write you a really strong letter. I want to show you something I think I should be able to without, yeah. without messing up this whole. So I have a link here to a document. It's from the Office of Distinguished and Postgraduate Scholarships. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with this office on campus, but if you're not, it's a great resource. Can you see this still? Can you see what I'm showing? Yeah, a little bit. Okay. Well, so basically what this is a document you can download that'll help you keep things organized so that you can gather this information. So what I like is that the questions are pretty holistic. They're like, what are some examples of public service you've demonstrated on campus? What leadership have you had on campus? What are some examples of community contributions? How do you spend most of your time outside the classroom? What issues or research focus would you like to take on? You don't have to do all of these, but I would definitely encourage you to download this document and then see, what information you can provide to your letter writers. So some things that would tell a different story or complement the story of your GPA and your research and the other things that you've done. So we have something in the chat. Thank you, Alexis. So that'll be probably an easier way for you to look at that. But like I said, this is not to make busy work for you by any means. It's to hopefully give you a framework to be able to add information, to provide different information to your letter writers. What questions do we have about providing these documents to your letter writers? Any questions? I'm actually in the middle of writing a recommendation letter for a student, and I'm missing some of this. And I'm looking for some of this to help me in the letter writing process. So it really does matter, and it really does help. All right. So the other thing that I know is super important, and again, in this beautiful spreadsheet that you've created, I hope that you're keeping track of deadlines and recognizing and flagging for yourself when you need to be asking professors. You want to give them as much time as possible. 2 to 3 months seems like a lot of time. 2 months. And if you don't have that right now, it's okay. Don't panic. Don't panic. You can still do this, but I think you'll want to be even more prepared. And if time is starting to run close, if you're starting to approach deadlines, you want to get that initial email that says, hello, Dr. So-and-so, I remember me from such and such class. I'm so excited about the prospect of pursuing biology in grad school, and I wanted to see if you would be willing and able to write me a strong letter of recommendation. So you want to, as early as possible, kind of do that ask. If you can in person, but I know we're still virtual a lot, so that's okay too, but send that initial email and have it be the ask. Don't at this point send everything, and don't assume that they're going to say yes. Keep your fingers crossed, write a very professional, personable email that says what you're asking. And then once they reply and say yes, then you can follow up with all of the documents and attachments and things. You just don't want to be presumptuous. You want to give them an opportunity to say no. And I think as much as possible, many faculty want to be as helpful to you as possible. It's also recommended that you follow up with friendly reminders, gentle, friendly reminders, maybe 1 month out or a couple weeks out. And depending on what the programs want, like, is there a link you send them? And those are the details that you need to be really mindful of. I think it can be really easy to miss something, but be sure that you're sending them all the accurate information so that they know what they need to do. Questions about the when?
Would it be better to send an email? I mean, I can see my professor in person, but would it be better to send an email first so that I'm not putting pressure on them, like face to face, to say yes?
Yeah, I think sending an email is good. A lot of this depends on your relationship. I think sometimes with faculty, and maybe this will happen also down the road, but sometimes we know the people, and do what you think works best depending on your relationship. But I also think if you're running short on time, sending an email pretty soon is probably better than waiting till you see them in person. And you can also offer that. I'm happy to come meet with you and talk with you further in person if that would be helpful, or schedule a Zoom. Just make yourself as available as you can. I'm sorry, my dog is sneezing and doing all sorts of stuff. It's real life over here. But anyway, so yeah, I think make yourself as available as you can. Offer a phone call, Zoom, or to meet in person. Does that answer, Edgar?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Good question. All right. This gets a little more complicated when you're deciding to take a gap year. I know I sit with lots of students who say, but when do I get this letter? I know this is important. And so I think a lot of these things, I so wish there was one way to handle all of these situations. And I could just be here, the authority on absolutely everything you should do to get into grad school. But a lot of this depends. So I want you to think about the benefits of getting a letter now. If you get a letter now, you know where your instructor is. You can get it done. You can get it done. And also when they had you in class, and so they'll remember you, right? But there are also some benefits to waiting. So for some people, when you take a gap year is when you learn a lot about what you really want to specialize in. You might, when I was talking about all the information you're giving to them, for them to write you a good letter, you might know so much more about your direction, about your interests, that you might be able to give them richer things that could help them write you an even better letter. So that is one of the benefits of waiting. Now, what you can also do is contact them now and let them know, hey, I'm going to be graduating. This is what I'm thinking of doing. I know that I would love to come to you for a letter of recommendation, but I don't need it now. How, what's the best way for you to do this? So to also give them some say in it. And they might say, oh, I'm happy to write you one now. And then if we need to, we can adjust it later, depending on what you did in your gap year, or what programs you're deciding to apply to. Or they can say, wonderful, thank you. I will make a mental note that you'll be following up in, several months to ask me for a letter. So it's just about maintaining that communication, I think, with the professor, with your letter writer. Questions about that? Does that make sense? Okay, so one of the other things to think about is waiving or not waiving your right to see the letter. So a lot of these situations and decisions are dependent on the relationship with the faculty member, with the letter writer, right? So I think also, if you're comfortable and you have a pretty good relationship with your letter writer, talk to them about this. What do you think? What do you think? Should I waive or should I not waive? Ultimately, it'll be your decision. But if you do waive your right to see the letter, then they'll just send the letter, on to the department, right? And you won't see it. And some letter writers prefer to do that. So this is where you need to kind of dialogue with that letter writer. Is that their preference? Is that how they tend to write letters? And some admissions committee members may give more credibility, but it's really hard to know. So if you don't waive your right, then you see the letters, then you get to kind of decide to say, oh, I'll send this letter to this program. You'll know what's in your letters. You can also hold on to copies for your own purposes. I actually have copies of old letters, which it's not like I sit around and read them or anything, but I don't know. It kind of depends on who's writing your letter, how you know them. They may let you know what the letter says. They might, I don't know, they might talk you through the letter. So be sure to talk to your letter writers about this. Questions, reactions to this? Emojis? Stress levels?
I was gonna ask, is it like, do you want the professor to only send one letter to one school, or is it can you ask for them to send them to multiple?
Yeah, no, typically you'll ask, like, you want to make it as easy, like as easy and straightforward for the faculty members. So often you have the same letter writers write for different programs, right? So that's a good question. And again, there are caveats. Maybe there's some experience that you've had that you want a letter writer from. Maybe it's not an academic. It's more of a volunteer experience or a work experience. And some of your programs will allow that, and some want only faculty. So it is, you want to be really, remember when I said you want to be really intentional about who's writing your letter and also to what program. But generally speaking, you have letter writers who are writing to, you're applying to PhD programs in psychology, and they're writing those letters that will be sent to multiple universities. Good question. All right, we're moving a little bit on to entrance exams, but did anybody feel free to put something in the chat or unmute if you had any other questions about letters of rec. Well, I know it can be challenging sometimes. I don't know about you, but I used to be anxious to talk to my faculty, and it wasn't even about talking to my faculty, but it was about doing this big thing, thinking I could go to grad school, and wondering, would they support me, and could I do it? And so it brought up a lot of feelings for me. So I think sometimes practicing, having somebody look over things, even if it's an email, role playing, I don't know, whatever works for you, that'll help you be more calm and confident in asking for that letter. All right. So one of the things I wanted to talk about with entrance exams is this whole idea of them being optional. And I don't know, are most of you planning to take them? Are you noticing some of the programs you're applying to that they're optional? Maybe put in the chat if you feel like you're a yes, you're a maybe. It might help me frame the discussion a little bit. Okay, so it looks like we have some planning to take and some not. Okay. And one of the things to remember is that even if if they're optional, again, that means it's optional, but a lot of times students are asking me, should I take it? Well, one of the things you have to think about is your own circumstance. How close are the deadlines? How good a standardized test taker are you? First of all, I guess, let me back up. Anybody can take the test. You can take the test. Nobody's going to see your scores unless you send your scores. So if you can tolerate the test, and you can tolerate and can pay the fees, and anybody can take the test, and you can decide not to send your scores anywhere. So that's one thing is, but if you're really wanting to maximize your chance of scoring the highest that you can, then you'll want to have some prep time. And the prep time totally depends on what you have going on in your world. Again, how strong a test taker you are. There are the very expensive courses that I don't necessarily recommend off the bat. Certainly, there are books. I had a book. I know there are books. There are probably online programs. The Sanger Learning Center does a workshop. It's going to be an overview, but it might be a good start if you're thinking about how to prepare. When you think about then, after you've taken the test and you've done the best you can, whether to send them or not, that's when I want you to look at that and think about the puzzle of your application. Are there weaknesses? Would it offset a lower than average GRE score, GPA? So would your GRE show something that your GPA, maybe you have a weakness with the GPA? And you can always go to the information from the schools about what their averages are, right? If you don't see it on their website, you can reach out to the graduate coordinator. They have this data. So you'll be able to see, like, what are their average GPAs? What are their average GRE scores? So those are the things you want to be thinking about. Is there some weakness that a GRE score might be able to compensate for? Also think about your bandwidth for taking it, if it's optional. Questions? I feel like this one's kind of complicated, and it's a little bit of it's evolving as we speak. I mean, COVID certainly caused a lot of programs to do away with the GRE temporarily. But what I've seen actually more recently is programs saying, you know, we're just not sure the GRE does a great job of predicting grad school success. And does it get in the way? Is it a barrier to getting different students, to making graduate school more equitable access for different students? So that's what I've seen in some regards. So I feel that was like clear as mud, but it depends. One of the things that I wanted to say at the outset, and but I'll say it now, is for your unique situation, you can come and meet with one of us in our office, and we can like talk and help you talk through pros and cons of even who to get for letter writers, whether to take the GRE. We have graduate school planning appointments that are hour-long appointments where we sit and just talk about your unique situation and the schools you're applying to and kind of help you make decisions. Because all this stuff is really new and it's hard to navigate through without some support and some assistance. But again, so you have a beautiful Excel spreadsheet for deadlines and who you've contacted and what letter writers and what programs. Then I think making a plan for yourself, if you are taking one of the graduate school tests, then I think making a plan for yourself about how you'll study. You know, I've heard everything from 1 month to 4 months. It's hard to throw out numbers like that because it really depends on what your life looks like, what classes you're taking, are you working, how much time can you dedicate to studying? So I'm hesitant to throw out that, but definitely more than like a week. You know, this is not a test you want to study for in a weekend, right? And you can take it multiple times, but it's also a big endeavor. So it's not something you want to be taking 3 times. I took it twice. Okay. We can talk more individually. Obviously, preparation and organization are key. All right, here comes a little self-care. And it's sometimes hard to know what we need and how we're doing unless we think about everything that we're balancing. So I want you to just take a moment and think about what you're balancing. And obviously academics, you're balancing this, which I think grad school applications are at least a part-time job. And they're a part-time job with a lot of like emotional, with a lot of emotional investment, right? So it's a lot. So if you're going to school and you're preparing for grad school, and then you're probably working and maybe doing some research, and then you have family responsibilities and you have to take care of yourself and you have to do laundry, and like, what do the rocks look like in your life? So I think that was something that, remember when I said I didn't do a great job in my first applications to grad school, I didn't really realize it was a part-time job with all this emotional stuff that went along with it. I just kind of did it and didn't do it as intentionally as I could. So what are you balancing? And the second question is, are there things that you can put on hold, that you can take off? You may not be able to. And also, are there supports that can help you as you go through this process? And that'll look different for everybody. So what do you need? I don't know why I picked this picture, but for whatever reason, I love this picture. It just like, it spoke to me. So at any rate, forgive my silliness, but also don't forgive my silliness. We need to be silly. We need to laugh. We need to do things that make us happy, right? Even if we don't know why. But what do you need? Do you need to manage stress better? Do you need more sleep? Do you need more exercise? Those are things only you can do, right? I can't really help. I can give you some resources, and I will send you out some resources for those things. But what about writing help? Part 3 of this is going to be looking at your personal statements and talking those through. You can also go to the writing center. You can also come visit us individually, and we can go over your statements and help you craft those in a way that really tells your story and really shows what you can do and what you will do in grad school. Maybe you're realizing with all the anxiety that you're experiencing that you might like to talk to somebody. So, do you know the resources on campus? Do you know the resources off campus, right? Because I think mental health and wellness is something that certainly been talked about a lot more with COVID. So accessing those services, whether it's some stress management, some mindfulness, or it's talking to a professional, what do you need? What will help you get through? These are things I want you to be thinking about. Not just for now, but especially for now, but also throughout grad school. Grad school is challenging. I'm not sure I know anybody who would say otherwise. And it also depends, again, on what you're balancing, what else you have going on in your life. But taking care of yourself, having a support system is really important. So hopefully you have a couple of people in your life who know that you're doing this, know that you're applying to grad school. Maybe you have some peers who are going through this with you. I know that really helped me, having some friends I could talk to. I remember staying up till wee hours of the morning in my grad program, applying for internship and being on the phone with my best friend at 3:00 in the morning, writing essays for applications. So finding your community now while you're applying, but also when you're in grad school is so important. Managing your time. I know this sounds crazy, but I took a LinkedIn learning class not too long ago that was really phenomenal on it's like sometimes it is really like managing your time. It seems like one of those things that it's hard to learn something new on, but I'm going to put it on one of the handouts I'm going to send you later. But I went to a really good LinkedIn learning class on managing your time. So noticing positive moments, like remembering the good things, the happy things, and seeking out professional help when you need it, whether it's now or down the road. How's everybody doing? Everybody still with me? Am I stressing you out or calming you down or somewhere in the middle? I don't know. All right, so resources, want to make sure that you're also checking out your career services office in your college. So Texas Career Engagement, where I work, we see all students, but you also have really valuable resources in your college. So be sure that you're going there, seeing what they have. Do they have any workshops? What services, what individual services do they have? Do they also have people who could read your personal statements? Because the more eyes that you can get on things, the better. For those of you who are interested in health and medicine, the Health Professions Office is a great resource. COLA also does great stuff around grad school planning too, but the University Writing Center makes individual appointments and they work with you on all kinds of writing, but they can help you also with your personal statement. I referenced the Office of Distinguished and Postgraduate Scholarships. They've got some great stuff on there about scholarships, and they have the big ones. Like the very prestigious ones, but they also have other scholarships that could be of interest to you. And they have that handout and also the prestigious ones, look at those as well, look at everything. But definitely look at that applicant questionnaire and as a resource to help your letter writers. There are also resources for your letter writers, probably more for people who aren't faculty. But there are some guidelines in there for people to write letters. The Sanger Learning Center has lots of stuff on time management, but they also have that grad school prep class. And financial wellness. I know for a lot of students, figuring out how to pay for grad school is a big concern, how to manage things in that gap year. The Financial Wellness Office is a newer office, and they also offer individual appointments. So take advantage of everything you can while you're still here. A lot of these services out in the world, cost money. You're paying for it in your tuition. So just be sure you're utilizing all of the resources that you can. I did look on Hire You Texas, and I saw that CNS has a grad school admissions panel coming up. I also know there was and Alexis reminded me of this earlier, that there was a graduate school event on Speedway today. I don't know, did anybody attend that? If you did, throw it in the chat. But again, there's a lot going on around grad school right now because this is the time. So let's see. So I will be having the third and final installment on personal statements and also resumes and CVs for grad school. That's on Tuesday, November 9th from 4 to 5. You're absolutely welcome to join. Again, just as a reminder, we meet with students individually. If you're thinking about grad school, but you're not exactly sure what discipline, what area, what to specialize in, feel free to make a one-on-one grad school planning appointment, and we can help you talk that through, think that through, and also have lots of resources to guide you through. We also offer career assessments, which can sometimes help students narrow down their field of interest. And we do everything else related to job search, internship search. So if you're thinking about a gap year and you want to get your resume together or cover letter together to plan for that gap year, if you want to think about how to get research experience over the gap year, these are all things that we can talk about. If you wouldn't mind, we have a very short survey, and then I'm going to stick around for any individual questions or group questions. But I really appreciate all of you attending, and I know this is a stressful time, but it's also a really exciting time, super exciting time. Happy to hear it was informative. Let us know what we can do. Feel free to make an appointment or come to our next workshop. And I will be sending out some stuff. Feel free to also shoot me an email if you have a specific question.
I was going to ask really quick. I'm trying to debate between certain schools that I'm applying to, and I'm deciding between the PhD programs and the master's